Καλησπέρα σας. Καλωσορίσατε στο Καναδικό Ινστιτούτο στην Ελλάδα. Λέγομαι David Rupp, είμαι ο διευθυντής και σήμερα έχουμε το 1, 2, 3, 4, ο τέταρτος, η τέταρτη διάλυση για το χειμώνας άνοιξη και πάλι είναι γεμάτο. Φέτος πάμε πολύ καλά και μάλλον πρέπει να αρχίζουμε να ρωτάμε για λεφτά για ένα μεγαλύτερο λοιπόν. Το πρόγραμμα μας δεν τελειώνει σήμερα, θα συνεχίζει αυτό το μήνα και την επόμενο μήνα και Μάιο και Ιούνιο. Σας πω όλα σε λίγο. Welcome to the Canadian Institute in Greece. My name is David Rupp, the director, and we are very pleased to see so many people here. I will tell our board how important it is that we need a bigger space for our lectures. And also just to remind you, I think I forgot in the past lectures, is that if you can't make it, we'd really like you to have you here, of course, in person. But if you can't make it, we do live stream our lectures, and they're available. Some of the lectures will be put on our later, but not immediately, on our YouTube channel. But certainly the live streaming is there for your, if you can make it. And it also, I suppose, indicates if you want a seat, you come early. Okay. Our program continues in 2 weeks' time on the 23rd when we have our Netta and Franz Leipen Fellow, Sarah Nash, who comes to us from the Department of History and Classics at the University of Alberta. She's in the back, hiding behind the pillar. And you'll have a chance when we have the reception to meet her. Her topic is Portraits of Romans as Hercules and Omphale, and a very interesting example of, well, I wouldn't say cross-dressing, but at least dressing up in the Roman world. So that's on the 23rd. But before that, we have a special event here in conjunction with the Canadian Embassy. It'll be on Tuesday, March 15th, it's coming Tuesday, and you'll be able to pick up the brochure in the back. And this is in conjunction with an exhibition that opened in January, I believe, at the Archaeological Museum of Thessaloniki called Haida Life, Spirit and Art. And it's an exchange exhibition we had in Canada last year. We had the Greeks from Agamemnon to Alexander, and this is a return exhibition, and that we will have here a ethnologist, Dr. Leslie Tepper, and curator at the Canadian Museum of History, and a artist, a Canadian artist by the name of Evelyn van der Hoop, who's, I say Canadian, but she's a Haida artist. And this is where the Haida are on the west coast of British Columbia, in that area, and that they are have a very interesting art style with animal motifs, vegetable motifs. And so if you ever go to Vancouver, you have to go to the University of British Columbia's Museum of Ethnology and Archaeology, where there's an excellent collection, as well as at Simon Fraser University nearby has also a collection. So this is here on the 15th. You can learn more from representative of the embassy who is here, and it will be at 7:30 in this room, and we hope it's full. We hope it's full as well. So this is a special event that just was organized in the past weeks. Now, what else is happening? On April, Jonathan, what day did we decide? 9th? Saturday, April 9th, a famous archaeologist and somewhat a person interested in the topography of Athens, the name of David Rupp, wrote a guidebook to Athens, and this person is in the process of enlarging and revising it as an iBook. And he is going to lead a 2-3 hour walking tour of Plaka from the Makariani statue to Monostarki Square, looking at the, talking about sites you can't see. Essentially, archaic Athens, Hellenistic Athens, and historic buildings and churches, as well as historic events that took place along there. It is we will enter no archaeological site. So no passes, no tickets are needed. We'll be walking outside of the limits of the fence sites. This will be at 10 o'clock at the statue. It's limited to 25 people, and we'll be sending out the information shortly about the walk. So we hope you come along and learn more about Athens. Then, on May 18th, we have our annual open meeting. It will be held at the Danish Institute at 7 o'clock. It is, I will deliver the lecture about what our members have been doing in the field in 2015, and then we're going to have as our invited speaker Professor Margaret Hogsma from the University of Alberta, who's going to talk about Hellenistic Thessaly. She's been working at Castro Califea for many years and New Hallows. So she is going to share with us ideas about Hellenistic Thessalia. And then on Friday and Saturday, June 10th and 11th, we will be celebrating the 40th anniversary of our recognition by the Hellenic Ministry of Culture and now Athletics as one of the official foreign institutes. We have a full 2-day program that starts. It starts at 10 o'clock on Friday and goes to 7:30 on Saturday. It'll be held at the Italian School of Archaeology at Athens, and it is going to feature. In fact, some of the speakers are in the room. It's going to feature the work of the institute in its broadest sense, and cover many topics from the Paleolithic period through Frankish Greece. So this is be a very big celebration for us on the 10th and 11th, and we'll be sending out invitations to that in later May, and of course for the open meeting sometime probably before Pascha, we'll send out that announcement. So put those dates on your calendar, and remember that we have many other things for you, archaeologically speaking, to share. With all of that, it's now time to invite the speaker. Yes. What would I do without the speaker? I don't know, how many of you read my blog?
I did.
How many of you read my blog and acted? None. But I'm going to give you a second chance. My blog, besides announcing tonight's lecture, talked about the refugee crisis that is affecting the city, especially, but also throughout Greece, and that individuals, groups, non-profit organizations and others have been gathering food, have been volunteering their time at the so-called hotspots, official and unofficial, and that I think if you have been down at Piraeus, have been at Victoria, Platea Victorias, or other places where you've seen them, watched television, you'll see that their conditions are very dire. It's very hard going, and they have become, this is me personally speaking, no, the Institute does not hold responsibility for this. They seem to be a pawn in a lot of power politics, internally and externally. But they need help. They need help. and I, on Sunday, delivered material to Syntagma. It was a celebration of Apokrias. Right next to it was an amazing crowd of people bringing donations of food, toys, medicine there, and volunteers taking them, organizing them, and then taking them. So, you need to do this. I think you need to do this. You need to not just walk by and say, it doesn't involve me. So, what do they need? They need basic hygienic material. They need simple foods to cook, because many of these people do not want to go to the hotspot, are not getting fed, and they in fact have started to do it. So, there's all sorts of things that you can do. You can bring it here. I was down at Syntagma yesterday. They're not doing that, but I do have contacts where you can bring them to the institute. You can. It's not difficult to go online and find out who's collecting them, and do your part. Unfortunately, I believe they will be with us for a very long time. But in the short term, I think they are in need of help. So, for Sarah's lecture, bring some.
Even next week.
Even next week, on the 15th. Bring it for the Haida, excuse me. Bring it for the Haida. Do your part. And they're also looking for people to help cook, to help clean up, to help play with the kids. It's, these people are in a desperate situation, and many people are not doing what they should be doing. Okay, don't forget, please. Big ball. Now it's time to get to the reason you're here this evening, tonight's lecture. Dr. Metaxia Tsipopoulou, a native of Athens, though who lived in Crete for many, many years, is a graduate from the Department of History and Archaeology at the University of Athens, a very illustrious class, student of Spiridon Iacovides, and that she holds her BA and doctorate degree from the University of Athens. She went on to do, afterwards, to do a postdoctoral fellowship at University of Bristol. She, last year, was back at Bristol as the Malcolm Weiner visiting professor. So she has a very strong tie to Bristol and to the UK. She also was a Fulbright scholar at the University of New York at Buffalo, SUNY Buffalo, now many years ago. She is a person who devoted her entire career to the Ministry of Culture, working in the 24th Ephoria, then 24th Ephoria, Eastern Crete, Kappa Delta, for much of her career. However, she excavated before that in the at Delphos and in the area on Naxos, on Kea with Kaski, on Milos with Renfrew. Her archaeological CV is connected to many important scholars and archaeologists, both foreign and Greek. She came to Athens in 2007 and was the director of the National Archive of Monuments, where you might know us from the Silikos Philum to Historikou Archaeou, tis Archaeologikis Hypericias, where I am the president and she is the vice president. So she started this Silikos as a founding member. Now, what she has been doing while at the DAM was digital heritage. That's something that is near and dear to her heart, as well as continuing her work. She is known as a specialist in the Cretan Bronze Age, as well Iron Age, and wider ranging. She has excavated, we will see one of her prime sites, Petras, in outside of Siteia in Eastern Crete, but she's also worked at Iafotia nearby. She's worked at Aklavia, which is also in Eastern Crete, Talismanos near between Arapatra and Pakiamos, Gritsa, various sites in Mirabello, and she is a person who knows a lot. If you drive with her through Crete and you come to a village, you can say to her, what came from here, and then there will be a comment of this person excavated and this tomb was found in it. So, and if the village doesn't have anything, you have to say it was not important in antiquity. So, her publications are many. She is a dedicated synergatis with many people, Lucia Vignetti, Eric Halliger, to name a few, and she has devoted, what we'll see is really the end of 35 years of work at and around Petras. I could go on and on, but it might reveal, I should have supposed to put a disclaimer at the beginning, that I know the lecture very well. So, with this, I will leave the podium, and Metaxia, please take the floor.
Thank you very much. And this presentation, and in honor of the Canadian, I'm wearing my Haida scarf. Okay. So. The archaeological site at Petras is situated 2 kilometers to the east of the modern town of Siteia in Northeastern Crete, and is investigated through excavation and systematic intensive survey under my direction since 1985. It's actually 31 years, not 31. Human occupation of Petras started in the final Neolithic, circa 3,200 BC, and continued uninterrupted until the end of the Bronze Age, circa 1,200 BC. The archaeological sites occupy 2 low neighbouring coastal hills, which were promontories in ancient times, extending into the southwestern and southeastern side of a deep embayment that is now silted up. The hills are 60 and 80 meters high, respectively. On the westernmost, or Hill 1, a Minoan palace and part of a quite extensive urban settlement were excavated. On the higher Hill 2, or Kephala, excavation revealed 2 settlements, the first dated to the final Neolithic IV and Early Minoan I, 3,200 to 2,900 BC, roughly, and the second one dated to the end of the Minoan era, in the 12th century BC. Also on Hill 2, in the last 10 years, we are excavating a very important monumental complex, the subject of today's presentation, which is an unplundered cemetery, one of the most important in Crete. This is an old picture, it's already 4 years old. The cemetery was established at the beginning of the Bronze Age, in the Early Minoan IIB period, and continued to be used until the end of the Proto-palatial period, circa 2,800 to 1,800 BC. The excavations at Petras offer an extremely rare opportunity to study in parallel the areas of the living and that of the dead. It should be noted in this context that Petras has been, since its first occupation, a gateway for the movement of people, of goods and of ideas, from the rest of Crete, the Aegean in general, as well as from the Eastern Mediterranean. Petras was able to become a central place and eventually the only flourishing palatial site in the Proto-palatial Eastern Crete because of its position and the large and safe anchorage. So it was since the beginning of its history the center of an area with dense occupation, as was proved by older and more recent intensive research. Before I start examining the data of the cemetery, allow me to present very briefly the evidence for the pre- and proto-palatial occupation of Hill 1, where the palace and the main settlement lie. Various excavated areas on Hill 1 have produced fragmentary evidence for the early Minoan period, but most of it came from the stratigraphical trenches dug inside of the palace boundaries. So you see early Minoan here, I don't know if you can see well, it's in blue. After the completion of the excavation of the palace, in order to understand the earlier occupation, we organized a systematic project of stratigraphical trenches aiming at answering specific questions that arose during previous investigations, such as the extent, the dating, the character and the function of any buildings that had occupied the area over which the palace was built, as well as the dating of the architectural phases and the architectural features of the palace itself. 23 test trenches in total were excavated down to the bedrock, except when there were encountered important features which could not and should not be destroyed or removed. The stratigraphical trenches, after the end of the excavation and the detailed documentation, were backfilled and are no longer visible. Also, you see that we excavated a larger area beyond the trenches. It's all what is pink on this slide. The results of this project were the following. The first organized human occupation on the plateau of Hill 1 at Petras was the Early Minoan II period. And these the Early Minoan II remains. The pottery on the earliest floors was Early Minoan II and Early Minoan IIIB. The bedrock was extensively quarried since the beginning of the occupation in the area in Early Minoan II, either to receive the foundations of walls or to serve as a floor surface. No architectural remains prior to the Early Minoan II period came to light in any of the stratigraphical trenches. So you see some of our trenches and there's stratigraphy there. The Early Minoan II settlement seems to have been well organized, and it might have occupied 3,000 to 4,000 square meters, that is the total area of the plateau. Also, in every excavated part of the settlement on the slopes of Hill 1, there was evidence for occupation in the Early Minoan II period. Floors and sections here. It is not clear why and how the settlement was abandoned in Early Minoan IIB, as it does not preserve any sign of fire destruction, contrary to other settlements in Eastern Crete, such as Myrtos and Vasiliki. It is certain, though, that the Early Minoan II buildings were neither repaired nor reoccupied. And you see, we have painted plaster from this period. From the successive Early Minoan III, few floor remains were preserved below the palace. As you see there. On the contrary, in sector 3 of the settlement, the occupation was quite extensive. This period, as the excavation of the cemetery showed, was an era of growth and development for Petras. The latest pre-palatial floors were Middle Minoan IIB, and this is a typical pottery found on them, and there is also on this slide you see also a complete plan of the palace with all pre-palatial remains in situ. Lower on the northeast slope of the hill, in sector 3 of the settlement, and a few meters to the north of it, during excavation of the trial trenches dug before the paths for the visitors of the site were constructed, important late pre-palatial remains came to light. Here you see foundation deposits cut in the bedrock that contained pottery similar to that found in the stratigraphical trenches of the palace. And more late pre-palatial pottery from the same area. Despite the lack of preserved architectural remains, the movable finds suggest the presence of elites at Petras, as one would expect just before the foundation of the palace. It is important to emphasize in this context that this pottery came to light, and you see it's very good quality pottery, came to light in every excavated area of the hill and not just on the plateau of the palace. The cemetery of the same period on the plateau of the Kephala hill, as we will see, tells the same story. At the east edge of sector 3 of the settlement was identified and partially excavated a building with interesting architectural features such as red plaster and a staircase with 3 steps also plastered. This building constitutes a terminus post quem for the dating of the most important late pre-palatial deposits at the Petras settlement. To the southeast side of this building was an extensive depression in the bedrock, measuring at least 10 by 5 by 2 meters, which was filled with more than 2,000 kilograms of very good quality pottery, dated to the Middle Minoan IIB and to a lesser degree to Middle Minoan II. In later times, the area was never reused, and thus this secondary deposit was preserved practically intact. This pit, known as the Petras Lakos, is an important Middle Minoan IIB, as I said, and Early Minoan II deposit, not just for Petras, but for the ceramic sequence of Eastern Crete in general. The pottery was fermentary and included mostly vases that were used in feasting, such as cups of various types, bowls, fruit stands, many with beautiful, often polychrome decoration, and also some vessels of the types usually connected with cut, but not necessarily, such as incense burners, raita, kalathoi, and kernoi, all of high quality. There were also many pottery marks, some identifiable to hieroglyphic signs. Furthermore, the deposit contained also fragments of stone vases made of serpentine and alabaster, fragments of triton shells, and a seal, you already saw that there, a seal with one of the earliest images of a male authority figure. The picture that this important deposit offers for the social organization of Petras at the very end of the pre-palatial period is one of competing elite groups, probably, as Donald Haggis here present suggested, each of them being identified within the community by particular symbols mirrored on the decorative motifs of the pottery and on the seals. This picture is strongly supported by the finds in the cemetery of house tombs and by the presence of elite architecture in the settlement outside of the palace in Middle Minoan II. In Middle Minoan II, the Petras Palace is constructed on a large, partially artificially leveled plateau. And you see in red all proto-palatial remains. This plateau was protected on the north side by a massive retaining wall of almost Cyclopean construction. This is almost 3 meters high here. So, and you see there is also a tower. At the same time, another Cyclopean type wall preserved to a height of 3 meters, almost 3 meters again, and equipped with rectangular towers was constructed at the foot of the hill, close to the coastline. In the immediate vicinity of the Lakos, excavations conducted before the construction of the paths for the visitors of the site brought to light remains of buildings. Unfortunately, as you can see, they are not well preserved, but they belong to the same period, with pottery very similar to that of the Lakos. And you see beautiful column bases there. At the end of the Middle Minoan IIB period, circa 1800 BC, the palace was destroyed, along with other palaces in Crete, by a violent fire. In a destruction deposit of the palace, the hieroglyphic archive was excavated. And this is where the archive was, there, and this is the publication. There were only 2 other excavated hieroglyphic archives in Crete, actually 3 deposits, 2 in Malia and 1 in Knossos, before this find. And it is very important to remember that the Petras archive was the only one found in an undisturbed, securely dated deposit, because the deposit was sealed after the destruction. So these are some pictures of them. It was a very difficult excavation. Excavating squares 50 by 50, and very, very difficult. Anyway, as I said, the archive was published in a monograph by the speaker, Eric Halligan, and because of the careful excavation, we were able to understand how this room of the upper floor was organized, and that there were 2 scribes operating at the time of the catastrophe, which happened in the daytime, because we found unfinished documents, while the scribes were working. And this is a very important feature of this. There were numerous sealings in the archive, coming from at least 40 different seals, which suggest a complex bureaucracy at the Petras Palace. To complete this brief summary of the place of the living at Petras, before we turn our attention to the place of the dead, I'm showing you here the pottery that was found with the hieroglyphic archive. Remember these shapes as we are going to see them back, again at the cemetery. Okay, now let's turn to the cemetery on the large plateau of Hill 2 or Kephala. The cemetery is adjacent to the oldest habitation of Petras, the final Neolithic and Early Minoan I settlement. This spatial relationship, the return to the place of the ancestors, is a very interesting feature for the remarkable historical continuity at Petras, and occurred again, as we will see, in later times, namely towards the end of the Bronze Age. The cemetery, the excavation and the study of the material of which are still in progress, consisted of an as yet unknown number of house tombs. 14 of them have been completely or partially excavated to date, and a rock shelter. Maybe there were more rock shelters, but we investigated only one up to now. And let's start with this rock shelter, which contained the earliest evidence. All burials are secondary in the rock shelter. Here we see some pictures of this. And this is a picture from Hill 1, from the palace to this area. Here is the rock shelter. And another, it's a beautiful, it's a key cup and another Minoan cup there. And yes, Professor Sevi Triantafylou, University of Thessaloniki, studied the paleoanthropological material and she published very interesting conclusions, worth mentioning. Before that, let us see first the dating of the rest of the finds. The pottery of the rock shelter is dated between Early Minoan IIIB and Middle Minoan IIB to A. All known pottery types, almost all of course, are represented with some exceptional examples. Of particular interest is the pottery of the so-called Campos group, a cycladic type, mostly locally made, as shown by the petrographic analysis. During the Early Minoan IIB and IIA phases, Petras, a site very close to the Hiavotia cemetery, had relations with the Cyclades and continued to be part of the Aegean coinage. It is probable that these relationships were direct and not through Aegia Fotia, as suggested by other non-ceramic finds. So, these non-ceramic finds include 7 fragments of marble cycladic figurines, as well as 4 additional schematized figurines, also made of marble, and 1 of spondylus shell, that came from surface layers of the cemetery outside of the house tombs, unfortunately, and some of them from the rock, and one schematized, this one, spondylus, from the rock shelter. It should be noted in this context that Petras, along with Archanes, are the only sites in Crete to have produced imported cycladic marble figurines. The 2 figurines in the right, the most complete, this is made in Crete, of course, it's of the well-known Kumasa variety, but this is important. So, these figurines are now in the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford and were bought by Arthur Evans in Siteia in 1895, so they probably also come from Petras. There was silver jewelry in the rock shelter, identical to that found in the Cyclades at the same period. The rock shelter produced also this exceptional gold pendant, unique for its manufacture and historical significance. It depicts a tree of life motif with 7 branches, which is identical with the sign of the hieroglyphic script. You can see the signs. This is one of the latest finds, these are much earlier, okay, of the latest finds in the rock shelter. There were also some gold bands and beads, and some bronze implements. Very important is this triangular dagger, dated to the Early Minoan period, the only weapon found so far in the Petras cemetery, if you can call this a weapon. So, in the Early Minoan III period, the first seals appear, indicating social differentiations and the beginning of a bureaucratic system, possibly. These 2 Early Minoan III bone seals, you can see the white ones here, are among the finest for this period, very rare in Eastern Crete. And there were also these beautiful, remarkable stalactite seals again from the rock shelter. As I mentioned above, the study of human bones from the rock shelter offers very interesting new evidence for the pre-palatial period in general. Although the finds cover a time span of more than 800 years, it is important to stress that the bones, accompanied by the grave goods, were moved to the rock shelter on a single occasion. This is what Siteia, who studied them, believed. You see the joints here, as shown by the inverted stratigraphy and the joints between the bones. So, the quantity of the material was very large, as you see in this plate, and the number of bones in the rock shelter totaled 20,987. So, 77 complete skulls were included, and there were in total 82 skulls. It has been calculated that the human remains belong to 165 individuals, including 6 infants, 12 children 1 to 6 years old, 11 children 6 to 12 years old, 7 subadults up to 18 years old, and 129 male and female adults. So, this plate shows that, of course it's by Siteia, this plate shows that the general health of the population was very good, suggesting that they belonged to the local elites. And here you see the mean stature of the population compared to other known burial groups of Crete of more or less the same period. But I'm not going to elaborate further on this evidence from the study of the paleoanthropological material of the rock shelter. I just wanted to give you a general idea about its importance. On the large plateau of Hill 2, some 50 meters to the east of the rock shelter, the house tombs were built. To date, as I said, 14 house tombs and 2 ceremonial areas are excavated, amounting to 1,600 square meters. Another 250 square meters are occupied by the settlement of the 12th century BC, so Late Minoan IIIC. It is interesting to note that the people who built the Late Minoan IIIC settlement avoided the area of the cemetery, with only one, and we will see that, very significant exception, to which we will return later. A low perivolous wall defined the cemetery to the east, and there is another perivolous wall at the west edge of the plateau. It is important to stress that all house tombs were not built and used at the same time. In any given period of use, pre and proto-palatial alike, there were several but not many house tombs in use. Furthermore, it is probable that some of those which were out of use were repaired and remained part of the mortuary landscape. Given this evidence, I believe that the cemetery was not used by the totality of the Petras community, but rather by a few distinct families who could afford the elaborate architecture and the high quality of the grave goods, many of them made of precious imported materials. Last summer, we established beyond any doubt that there were house tombs built, used and destroyed or abandoned in the Early Minoan II period. So this is very new. Until then, there was only indirect evidence for this early date. Not all architectural remains are connected with human bones, though. You see all the EM2 remains here in red. Okay. But not all of them are connected with human bones. And this is interesting, as this area, with only pottery and other artifacts, but no bones, do not seem to be domestic, and they were probably used for ceremonies. But we need more work on that. Anyway, as is well known, as I already said, many flourishing settlements in Eastern Crete, such as Myrtos and Vasiliki and elsewhere, suffered a violent destruction and were subsequently abandoned. The same was true for Petras. It was abandoned and later reoccupied, as I already mentioned, although there is no evidence at Petras for a fire destruction. The Petras cemetery, again, we see that something is happening there in the Early Minoan II. B. Two of the excavated house tombs at the south end of the cemetery belong to this period. House tomb 15 and 17. And you see that the construction of house tomb 15 destroyed, it's partially on top of 17, so something happened there. And furthermore, 15 was found almost empty. And as I said, partially built on the ruins of 17. These two house tombs produced a well-preserved, especially 17, produced a well-preserved burial deposit, including an early seal made of spondylus shell and a gold pendant. This is similar to this one, it's not the same, of course, you know this from Brannigan's book. Underneath room 4 of house tomb 3, that's here on the plan, a very important Early Minoan II deposit was excavated, which continued to the north, outside of the room. You can see here and again here. So it is a rectangular space, 4 meters long, with a gamma-shaped low bench at the east and south sides. On this bench, there was a large quantity of vases, mostly drinking and serving, accompanied by 2 foot amulets, one of them with a ceiling surface. Yes, you see here. The pottery includes imported wares, such as this sauce boat, extremely rare in Crete, and this angular-footed cup, which is still a mystery. And we have more. We have also another 2 from house tomb 17. It's probably of Anatolian origin, but I don't know yet. It was not a domestic deposit. This deposit does not look to have been a domestic deposit. And I suggest that we are dealing with an area for offerings and ritual consumption of food and drinks connected with burials, probably house tombs, no longer preserved. This hypothesis is strengthened by the fact that we were able to connect some Early Minoan II sherds with human bones found in the area of house tomb 3. And this is another very recent find in August 2015. So there was a burial area in house tomb 3, probably connected with this. 2 similar deposits of the same period were excavated. We're talking about Early Minoan II. Were excavated, the first one underneath house tomb 1, and you can see the earlier wall there, and of course facilitated pottery, and the second one underneath house tomb 5. And you see we have 2 walls here, earlier than the house tomb, and pottery. From the following period, Early Minoan I, the evidence in the cemetery is more abundant. First, we have 3 house tombs, numbers 3, 4, and 5, in the middle of the excavated area. You can see them in green. House tomb 4 was subsequently cleaned from its original context to be reused in Middle Minoan IIB, as we will see. But of course, the architectural sequence is very clear here, because you see that it's on top of 3. Also, in the area of house tomb 2, underneath room 1, a large pit was excavated in the bedrock, which contained 1 primary, and this is very rare, and several secondary burials, accompanied by rich grave goods. Let's start with house tomb 3. So this is house tomb 3 there. It is 34 square meters and was initially rectangular and then divided, you see, by these walls. And then this room was added after the construction of house tomb 4 here. But all this within Early Minoan III. To the south, in front of the entrance, there was a semi-open space, 5 here, and this rectangular room 1 was a later addition within the same period. Also, one more small space over here was 2 was also an addition. All this architectural history of House Tomb III belongs to the same period, namely Early Minoan III, mostly, maybe Middle Minoan I, but mostly EM3. And there you see what was found on the surface layer, a juglet and a beautiful stone vase. Again, on the upper layer in room 1, there were a series of jugs. And in a slightly deeper layer, the burial deposit started, and it contained rich grave goods, as you can see here, pottery, stone vessels, ivory and stone seals, as well as various gold bands and beads. So a very rich deposit. Room 4 contained very rich Early Minoan III burial deposits. We have been excavating this room for 3 years now, not finished yet. More than 80 centimeters deep, so it was a very, very deep burial deposit with hundreds, thousands of bones. Very interesting was this bone figurine, or maybe it's a pinhead, because it's broken here. You see it's almost 4 centimeters. Probably imported from the Eastern Mediterranean, and an ascos in the form of a ram. In room 4 was found one of the only five burial containers in the Petras cemetery, and this container was a ceramic wine press with containing 2 secondary burials and an Early Minoan III cup. So this is the burial container at Patitiri. Okay. So in room 5, here outside, this beautiful miniature stone vessel made of basalt, probably from Egypt, and this is, and this is of course a very well known shape in this period. Going now to House Tomb 4, the only Early Minoan remains in House Tomb 4, which, as I mentioned, was cleaned to be reused later in Middle Minoan IIIB, was this marble schematic figurine and the foot amulet. They were left somewhere on the floor and were not cleaned. House Tomb 5, another important Early Minoan III context, is situated to the west of 3 and to the south of 1, and it has an entrance to the west, and it was originally almost square, again with various additions around. It measured 27 square meters, and then 12 square meters were added. Room 1 is a very small area, but was full of bones, and had very few grave goods, as you can see here. Then room 2 produced these beautiful stone vessels and the bronze axe. Room 10 was very rich, both in anthropological material and in grave goods, as for example, this very fine hippopotamus ivory cylindrical Early Minoan III seal. There are two seals, one and another one here. And in room 9, the situation was similar, again with a very large quantity of secondary burials, including a semi-articulated skeletons. Semi-articulated skeletons are also found in other house tombs, and they indicate that the bones were removed from their original place into the house tombs before the complete defleshing. An unusual feature of House Tomb 5 is that the bones were moved among the various rooms. This is observed for the first time in the cemetery, but this has been studied completely. So parts of the same skeleton were redeposited in different rooms. We don't know why this happened. The pottery included specimens imported from South Central Crete. This is the Messala area. And